Hey everyone, this is Dave from My Own Devices, and this is the video that I said was coming a couple of months ago, so I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, I am Nikki, Dave's wife. I would like to thank you all for watching his videos. Please remember, if you like them, subscribe, share and comment. Dave doesn't have many friends, so you have all become his virtual friends, which makes him very happy.
This whole saga started for me back in the autumn of 2021 when I was thinking seriously about getting more into tube amplification. As I said in a previous video, I started to dip my toe into tube audio gear when I purchased a Schiit Saga Plus and a Valhalla 2 a couple of years ago. As nice as they are, they weren't really giving me the tube goodness that I was seeking. It wasn't until I found an inexpensive Chinese amplifier with EL84 tubes that I started to glean an inkling of what I was missing in my hi-fi world. I'd watched reviews by numerous YouTubers extolling the virtues of tube amps with adjectives like rich and holographic and romantic and euphonic to describe their sound. And I considered some of the more popular affordable models and a few used ones that I'd seen on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. But which amplifier should I buy? That was a challenging question for me. Firstly, I had to decide on a budget. Now, I figured that if I sold a few surplus hi-fi components, I could set aside about $1,500 for the purchase. Obviously, a new tube-powered unit from the likes of Macintosh or Conrad Johnson, Audio Research, VAC, or Carry Audio were completely out of the question. They're far too pricey. I seriously considered vintage, like the Fisher 500C receiver, but I didn't want to get into potential servicing costs and problems like that. So even for a fully restored unit, I wanted something new and relatively trouble-free. So I reached out to fellow YouTuber Chris at Flux Condenser channel for advice. And from what anyone could see from his numerous videos, he knows much more about this subject than me. We quickly talked about partnering up in future videos and decided that a kit amplifier would be an ideal subject for a collaborative project. And he went above and beyond with help and sent me a plethora of links to tube amp kits that I could consider. And after some back and forth and conversation, I decided on an amp kit by Tubes for Hi-Fi. By early November 2021, I'd saved up enough money to purchase the amp, but Tubes for Hi-Fi were temporarily out of power transformers. So I just put down the $100 deposit to get on the waiting list. And a few weeks later, I received an email from Roy at Tubes for Hi-Fi, who informed me that an amp kit was available. I promptly paid the balance and received the kit about a week later. Now, from what I understand, Tubes for Hi-Fi out of Las Vegas, Nevada is run by the original founder, Roy Mottram, and his business partner and amp designer, Bob Latino, retired last year. Now, it's an amplifier that is closely based on the legendary Dynaco Stereo 70, or ST-70. And if you've never heard of the Dynaco ST-70 amplifier, well, it is considered one of the most popular and highly regarded amplifiers in hi-fi history. It was designed by an audio industry giant by the name of David Hafler. As a young hi-fi enthusiast in the mid-1950s, he was designing and selling amplifier kits to hi-fi hobbyists. This was not unusual back then, as there were a selection of amplifier kits available during that period. What made his kits more popular is that they came with the circuit boards already assembled, which saved the builders a significant amount of effort and time. He then met fellow enthusiast and amp designer by the name of Ed Laurent, and they formed the Dyna Company, or Dynaco, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania during 1955. And these early amplifiers could be purchased as kits or already factory pre-assembled. The ST-70 was unleashed into the market in 1959. The aim of the design was to get better sound by employing 4 quality output tubes, a rectifier tube, 2 input driver tubes, and a set of high-quality output and power transformers. The ST-70 was also very affordable, selling for just $99.95 in Dynakit form and $129.95 fully wired and assembled. It is estimated over 350,000 units were sold during its long production run. Dynaco made several revisions to this amplifier and also produced a line of other components, including smaller and larger tube and solid-state amplifiers, preamplifiers, and tuners. Their move into loudspeaker design produced another hit product, the Dynaco A25. Heffler sold Dynaco in 1966 to Tyco, but remained with the company until 1974. After a brief stint at Audiophile, he founded the David Heffler Company in 1977, which became very successful with a line of Heffler-branded audio components, also available as kits and fully assembled. In fact, my very first ever separate system in 1983 was a Heffler preamp and amplifier. This amplifier is considered to be a masterpiece of exemplary, robust engineering with its clean and simple circuits that lends itself to a unique sound. Over the past 40 years, the Dynaco ST-70 has remained a much-loved audio component and a classic that has inspired countless DIYers to develop mods and improvements to the original design. Besides the Tubes for Hi-Fi model, there are numerous other makers out there selling their own versions of the ST-70. Now, getting back to this amp story, due to the upcoming December 2021 holiday season and other obligations, we had to delay the start of this project until the end of January 2022. Many viewers seem to actually believe that I accidentally ordered a kit rather than an assembled unit, and I attribute that solely to my incredibly convincing direction and acting skills. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're too kind. Anyway, I promptly shipped the amp kit to Chris in Massachusetts, as he had a very tight deadline to complete it before flying off to Russia. Yes, that's right, Russia. Just days before a major conflict was about to break out. Perfect timing, Mr. Condenser. Anyway, things were touch and go during the building phase, but Roy was extraordinarily helpful with quick advice and getting some needed replacement parts to Chris in Massachusetts in time. Before departing to the Soviet Union, Chris shipped back the amp and it arrived safely in Florida less than a week later. All right, last time I did an unboxing a few weeks ago. It didn't go as planned. I got a big surprise when I opened the box. So I just got these 2 boxes. They just arrived today, and I'm going to do an unboxing. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be as surprised, and I should be very happy. So let's do this as quickly as possible. I don't want to drag it out too much. Chris at Flux Condenser packed this, and I assume he did a good job. All right. Right. Let's pull it out. It's pretty heavy. It's like 30 pounds, right? Get rid of the box. All right, I've got a box inside here. These stupid scissors always do this. All right, here we go. I think Chris had to sort of make this box. Or bubble wrap. It's in there good, huh? Pick it up. All right. Got lots of extra bubble wrap. Oh my goodness. This could take a few minutes. So I'm going to do some editing here. more foam. All right, obviously he removed the tubes, and I believe that's, well, obviously that's what's in this box. All right. Put it here. All right, well, there we go. There it is. There's the power cord. That's permanently attached. It doesn't have a socket. And he spray painted these transformers, and he said he was very happy with how they looked, their finish. And I'll put the tubes in it, and I'll give it a listen. All right, let's talk about my amplifier here. The size, the shape, and layout of the chassis of this model, which is called the VTA ST-70, is identical to the original Dynaco. According to the designer, Bob Latino, the concept behind the VTA ST-70 was that it remains faithful to the look of the original Dynaco, but still take advantage of 50 years of advances in electronics so that it's more reliable and sounds more like a modern tube amplifier. Reading from the Tubes for Hi-Fi website, some of the improvements that Bob Latino incorporated into the design are new stainless steel, non-magnetic chassis that should age much better than the older nickel-plated steel, more robust, custom-manufactured power transformers that allow the option of using KT88 tubes instead of just the stock EL34s. He doubled the power storage capacity of the capacitors. The upgraded VTA driver board uses 3 new 12AU7 tubes in place of the 2 inferior 7199 tubes that are unobtainable now. Now, Dynaco was saving money by using a 2-tube board design, but that led to some serious sonic compromises, according to Bob Latino. Users can now individually bias each of the output tubes, which was not possible with the older ST-70. It also has gold-plated and wider spaced input jacks to accommodate thicker interconnects, and the speaker connections on the back are modern gold-plated 5-way binding posts instead of the old-fashioned screw type that you needed to use spade connectors and a screwdriver. It also has more durable and reliable ceramic tube sockets. One unusual feature of this amplifier is that it has front-mounted input jacks here, rather than having them on the back. And there's a good reason for that, apparently. By mounting these jacks on the front, it has a very short run of wire from the jacks to the driver board, which is very close, only a couple of inches. And with less than 2 inches of wire, it's far less likely to pick up hum and noise from the power transformers in the back. This model ships from Tubes for Hi-Fi with 4 Tung-Sol EL34B power tubes and 3 Millard 12AU7 driver tubes and a Tung-Sol 5AR4 rectifier, which is not there, and I'll tell you about that later. Now, these are modern Russian-made tubes based on American and British designs that are decades old. The ST-70 is rated at 35 watts per channel, which is plenty for anyone with reasonably easy to drive speakers and a moderately sized room. I ordered the upgraded capacitors, a volume knob here on the front rather than a stereo mono switch. So it's basically kind of like a simple integrated amp now. And I also ordered the plastic cover here that goes over the driver board, which I think is a good idea. Now let's talk about my initial experience with this amplifier after I unboxed it. Mr. Condenser informed me that the rectifier tube blew during his testing. Now apparently this is a common issue with this model and that he did not have a replacement. He suggested the option of using a solid-state rectifier rather than attempting to locate a tube. Now they are currently in extremely short supply due to the conflict over there in Ukraine. The role of the rectifier tube is to convert the AC current from the mains to DC current, which the amp needs to operate. It does not have a significant influence on the sound of the amplifier except when the amp is pushed hard. A tube rectifier can struggle providing needed power at high volumes, resulting in something called tube sag. Solid-state rectifiers don't experience that issue, so I bought this highly recommended Weber copper top solid-state rectifier to fit the bill. So I connected it to my desktop system and powered it up, and for a couple of minutes it was working great. And then I noticed a hum in the background and I turned it off. So I checked the connections and turned it on again, and the hum was still there. Now, rather than go into lengthy details about what occurred after I decided to pull out the tubes and reseat them back into their sockets, let's just say there was a louder hum and a quantity of smoke. So what did I do? I brought the amp to my local electronics service whiz, Jim. And he called me a couple of days later to inform me that he'd done some troubleshooting. And the first thing he discovered was that the cord was almost completely cut through. What? And also determined that a faulty power tube was the culprit. He ended up replacing 2 resistors and the choke, and I had to buy a new set of 4 tung-sole tubes.
And then, see, I spliced your thing.
Right.
I guess you can leave it like that unless you want a new plug put on it.
Will it have any ill effects?
No.
Okay.
Just that if you went to sell it, it doesn't look
Right.
right.
Consider that in the future. As long as it's safe.
Safe?
It's gotta be safe.
It's not even safe. It's not safe to get married, and you did that.
That's true.
You know?
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
It does.
So after the parts arrived and Jim repaired the amp, he ran it for a day or so in his shop until it was deemed ready to finally bring home. So here it is, everyone, and I've been listening to it daily for a few weeks now, and I love it. It's so good that I haven't been using my other systems nearly as much. Well, first let me describe my current listening setup. Now this is my desk, and the ST-70 sits here in the corner. Now this thing is heavy for its size, around 33 pounds, so it needs a stable surface to sit on, and this desk is pretty good. I have this SM-SL SU6N DAC connected to my 2018 Mac Mini through a Singzer SU6 USB bridge. And the speakers are these wonderful ProAct Response 2.5s, and they're floor standing speakers that I've had for a couple of years, and they're rather tall with ports around the back about halfway up. And I like to think of them as two-way bookshelf speakers with built-in stands. Due to their excellent engineering and substantial volume, they do produce a healthy amount of low-frequency information. The interconnect cables, the power cable, and the speaker cables are all by Vandenhull, and the USB cable is by DH Labs. The speakers are not exactly sensitive at 86 decibel 1 watt 1 meter, but are a fairly easy 8 ohm load for amplifiers. I stream CD quality and higher with Amazon and Apple Music, and I play my RIP CD files using Audiophiles. I would consider this to be a fairly intimate near-field setup, even though the speakers are not sitting very close to me on my desktop, but rather about 4 to 5 feet away, towed in around 45 degrees. Okay, so you're still asking about the sound. It is a glorious three-dimensional audio fest. When people use the term holographic when describing music played through amps like this one, they are not wrong. I was trying to avoid using that word, but there aren't many synonyms for holographic. How about sculptural? The music just fills the air all around my desk here, above and to the side and forward and back. And the most important aspect of music reproduction to me and a lot of people is the mid-range, and this is where this amp shines. The vocals, guitars, horns, drums, keyboards just come to life and enchant me to no end. I become spellbound by the music and time just flies by. The high frequencies are crisp, polished, and delightful, never harsh or strident. Absolutely no complaints from me in that department. Now for the bass. If you are seeking super tight, punchy, gut-pounding bass, you can look elsewhere. The bass is very present and sufficient, but it's not the kind of bass you might get with a beefy solid-state amplifier. It is somewhat soft, rounded, and mellow compared to my Bryston or Ecostat amplifiers, for example, and it can go plenty deep for my needs. You know, virtually everything you decide to purchase in life has its own set of trade-offs, pluses and minuses. To get this, you might have to give up that. This is definitely a factor when you have a limited budget. And I would not trade all of the incredible sonic benefits of this tube power amplifier for one with more dynamic bass, but with less engaging mid-range and treble presentation. Obviously, the awesome ProAct speakers and the other components in the chain contribute nicely to the overall presentation. And I really like the ProActs. I have a very difficult time finding something to criticize them for, except for they are fairly heavy. What else do I like about this amplifier? Well, I like its smaller footprint and incredible looks. When my wife saw it for the first time, it was not at all what she expected. She thought it looked extremely weird and fragile. The shiny stainless steel chassis looks extraordinary, and the glowing orange of the tubes is very eye-catching in a darkened room. Let's talk about any downsides. Well, like all devices with vacuum tubes, it does run very hot. You can feel the heat from like 12 inches away, so it should be kept out of the reach of small children. It will noticeably heat up a room. And I know individuals who use solid-state gear in the warmer months and only use tubes in the winter. The input jacks on the front are kind of strange, but I did explain earlier why it was designed that way. And they recommend using this method of connecting the cables. I do wish that it had an IEC power socket on the back rather than the captive power cable, but the original design did not accommodate that option as it wasn't invented yet. Now, Tubes for Hi-Fi does sell an updated modern version of this amplifier with a larger chassis, rear-mounted phono input jacks, and a detachable power cable. This is an excellent modern take on a legendary design, and I do not hesitate to recommend it to anyone interested in owning a tube-powered amplifier. Mr. Condenser told me he really enjoyed building it, so if you possess the knowledge and ability to wire it up yourself, go for it. And if you want one already assembled, it's only a click away for $400 extra. The only caveats right now are that Tubes for Hi-Fi is having challenges keeping up with the demand, and currently they are out of stock on the Russian-made tubes. Chris, or rather Mr. Flux Condenser, did a fantastic job building his amplifier kit. He packed it up beautifully and it arrived in perfect condition. And I know he had a few issues during the build process that Roy at Tubes for Hi-Fi was quick to help resolve. I look forward to one day seeing the Flux Condenser video of the build, and I'm sure it will be amazing. Thanks, Chris, wherever you are. Huge kudos to Chris, Roy, and Jim for their help getting this amplifier kit built and working perfectly. I'm over the moon with the results.